Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. This is going to be for May 5th. First of all, thank you so much for being here and being part of the Soulprint community. I very much appreciate it. To the donors, thank you so much. Your generosity just forever blows me away. So thank you very, very much for that. To any new subscribers, welcome. So I have to admit, the news lately is sort of making me angry. It's kind of irritating me. Um, because it is as if stupid and corrupt and cruel is just rising, higher than the sky. And I'm trying to sort of get a grasp on why and what's going on. So I'm going to channel. All right. And I'm going to do a direct channeling. So if Spirit could just please explain to me why everything seems to be accelerating. And it feels very much like it's accelerating in the wrong direction. So let us just take a moment and see what Spirit has to say to us, shall we? So if you think about a pot of water, you got that pot of water on the stove, and you can see those little bubbles that are starting to form. Now, I think technically, that could be considered a pot that has reached boiling point. If you leave that pot on that stove, it's going to bubble harder and harder and harder and faster and faster and faster until it all over the stove, and then you have a mess to clean up. That's where we are. It is when things sort of reach that critical mass, that period of time when, those bubbles are literally right at the top of the pot. That is when either you pull the pot off of the heat and bring the temperature down, or you let it boil over. And that's exactly the point where we are. We're at a place where the greed and the corruption, the, the insanity is accelerating and accelerating to a point where it is going to reach critical mass. When it reaches that critical mass, that is when meaningful change is created. So what you have here with the experience is that people on the planet are experiencing, and particularly in the United States, because things have really spiraled out of control, and they are literally hanging on to their democracy kind of, by their fingertips. It is that critical mass that is needed to actually facilitate meaningful, effective change. That critical mass is when people who normally don't pay attention start to pay attention. That is when, the justices' behavior is not just sort of maybe you think maybe it might be a little corrupt. It is screaming corruption, certainly from our perspective. It is when a governor of a state says, Yeah, that's really too bad about those 5 people who got shot, including that 9-year-old kid. But you know what? They were illegal immigrants. So those are the kinds of things that create critical mass. It is about women saying, no, no, enough is enough. And now we're going to take you to court because you don't get away with that behavior. And to be fair, that started realistically with the Me Too movement. Okay. And it has continued to accelerate and accelerate. Hang on. Sorry, puppy. As these events take place, it's in many ways, it is sorry, the dog was barking because my phone was going off because there was an emergency alert on my cell phone, um, because there it has been so dry out here in Alberta that there's like these pop-up forest fires or grass fires all over the place. So that was what that was about. So when things hit that kind of critical mass, that is when things change. And in order for them to hit that critical mass, it really has to sort of get in your face. So, it's always craziest before the storm, I guess. There is an energy now of acceleration so that things can finally be brought into the light so that they can finally be brought out of the shadows that they have been in for a long time, bring them into the light, and actually start course corrections. So, what is making everybody so agitated and frustrated is the fact that it seems as if um, it's just like an unending litany of politicians saying incredibly stupid things. It is about judges who say, yeah, every other judge in the country needs to follow these ethics rules, but we don't. Kind of like we're not, no man is above the law, kind of, except us. um you know the vast majority of abortions take place somewhere around 21, 22 weeks. But you know what? Let's make abortions illegal, like literally from, the, the moment you light the cigarette, okay? From inception. Let's make abortion illegal 6 weeks when, like, the vast majority of women do not even know they're pregnant. Let's just push everything to the wall. And as crazy as that is making us, there is a reason. And the reason is the boiling. The reason is it needs to hit that critical mass so that everything kind of becomes exposed and real change can be affected and real change can happen. It is about not putting guns in schools to keep kids safe from guns. It is about not making, women and endangering their health suffer and not get the care that they need. And what a lot of, men, I guess, don't understand is there's so much more than just, there's so much more to reproductive care than just, you can't have an abortion. So where we are right now is that space and time where, because everything is getting pushed to the extreme, we are finally able to see with clarity what needs to be addressed, what needs a course correction, what needs to be reevaluated, what needs to be seen from simply a better perspective, a higher perspective, a more light-filled perspective. So you can anticipate things continuing to make you a little bit crazy, but it is necessary. It is part of how real change is created. It is how you take situations, areas that were sort of in the shadows, and you bring them into the fore so that people can see them, look at them objectively, and start to recognize that, yeah, you know what, this actually isn't really acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to my neighbors. It's not acceptable for my state. It's not what I want for my country. And therefore, change happens. There's, and again, the US and its election cycles that pretty much are perpetual. But there's already a lot of talk about, the 2024 election. And there's going to be sort of a lot of concern and agitation because things are going to get crazier. And the question is going to be, like, how much can we take as a country? How much can we take as a people? But those organizations, those people, those politicians, those governors who persist in pushing things to the wall are going to find that by and large their attitudes are rejected. And I'm not, there's going to be stunts, and, state governments in particular are going to try all kinds of things to sort of interfere with people voting because they recognize that their policies, the things that they have been pushing and preaching, are so unpopular that people are really starting to question, and I'm talking about, Republicans, independents who tend to lean Republican, are starting to really, really question the decisions and the choices that are being made by the people they put in power to represent them. And so it is important to recognize and understand that the path we're on is taking us to a place of higher vibration. It is taking us to a place of greater light. But the reality is, until you recognize what needs the light, until you have real clarity about where the light needs to shine, you really can't correct it. And so that is why right now it feels as if things are sort of spiraling into kind of a place of crazy where you kind of almost can't grasp what is coming out of people's mouths. But that's okay, because that creates that boiling pot. That creates that critical mass. And that is where change happens. That is how it happens. And that is the pathway. So as you move forward through 2023 and into 2024, you're going to see periods of sort of intense, like, I can't believe what I just heard that person say, or I can't believe what they're thinking. But that's okay, because it's not being bought by the vast majority of people. They're catering to a very, very small, frankly, minority of people. And that ultimately is not going to serve. So understand the change that you are here to witness, to support, is happening. But it is happening in a way that brings everything to the surface so that it can be, corrected. It's sort of like, the foundation under your house. Okay. The foundation is cracked. The drywall or the cement is crumbling. It's like a disaster. Until you dig down, you really can't assess how extensive the damage is. But logic tells you that, putting down new flooring inside the house is not going to fix the problem. And that's kind of what's been going on for a long time. There's sort of been these like band-aid solutions. And particularly in the United States, there has been a lot of emphasis or reliance on, well, that's the standard. That's the way they always were. That's our tradition. That's just the way it is. So yeah, you know what? We don't need to, worry about Roe v. Wade being overturned because it's been 50 years. Why do we need to, entrench that into law? Well, hello, now you know. So it is important that, as kind of crazy making as what is going on now is, that there is an understanding that this is the path that leads to the healing of a people and the healing of a nation. And by extension, the United States is not the only country where things are kind of going like a little nuts. And so you have other countries around the globe who are also going through their own course corrections. And, it's important to remember that souls choose to be born into certain areas, certain countries, certain families for reasons. And so maybe we're never going to see an entire globe that is a democracy. Maybe that's not actually the plan. Maybe there are some people, some souls, who frankly do better in a more restricted environment. Because those are lessons or realizations, wisdoms that they need to gain. But where there is a will of the people to create a more level playing field, that is what the road we travel is bringing. So sometimes you just have to turn off the television and walk away. Sometimes you just have to shut down your media feeds and go, I'm done. I can't listen to this anymore right now. And that's okay. Do not disengage, because it's really important that everybody stay focused on the goal. And the goal is to make sure, particularly in the United States, that there is a strong enough majority Democratic Party on all three levels so that actual effective change can be made. It's also important to realize and recognize that a lot of those old and antiquated ideas that are sort of stuck to certain segments of the population, that is diminishing. It's diminishing because it's being sort of overshadowed, if you will, by the light. It's being eclipsed by the light. And so it's important to stay focused. It's important to take good care of your mental and spiritual health, because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And there are energies that are supporting, that are working, that you are unaware of from the higher realms. sometimes it feels sort of that as a civilization, we're kind of left to flounder around. But in fact, we are not. And in fact, the path that we walk is taking us to that higher vibration, to that fourth and fifth dimension energy. It is taking us to a space and a place where people start to actually honor and respect other human life, recognizing that we are all from one source. And sometimes it's a little hard to swallow the fact that some of those crazy things that are coming out of people's mouths are, somewhere down the line, we're actually connected to them. But sometimes you have to realize that the crazy things are helping to expose what has for too long been in the shadows. It has for too long been what people were not paying attention to. Oh, my dad's a Republican. My grandfather's a Republican. I guess I am, and I guess I'm going to vote that way. And I don't really need to watch debates, and I don't really need to pay attention to what the issues are, or even how they're impacting me and affecting me, because well, this is just the way it always was, and this is the way it's going to continue. That stops. That's coming to a stop because the critical mass is creating an environment where people can no longer just say, well, it was good enough, for my dad or my grandfather. The realization is that the world is changing, and therefore it needs to be good enough for all. So, there is a really big lunar eclipse in Scorpio. Like right now, I guess in some places it's the 5th, and other places in the world it'll be the 6th. And exactly, what we've been talking about is exactly what's happening. Scorpio brings that which is hidden to the light. So since we've already established there's a lot of stuff that has been hidden that needs to be healed and corrected. Let us, to the best of our ability, embrace the awareness that we are now being shown, because that will take us down the path that we most want to walk. I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has been comforting. And on that note, I hope you have a really nice weekend. I hope you enjoy whatever the days ahead offer you. And until next time, take care, be well, and we'll see you really soon. Bye-bye.